Car crashes. Some people can have one a decade, but I'm not most people. I'm special. I can have multiple in a single weekend. This has led to some issues with the structure of my front bumper. In particular, both of the front supports have yeeted themselves out in a desperate bid to escape me. Consequently, this has left the edges of my bumper saggier than an 80-year-old's balls. So today, we use the miracle of 3D printing to fix those saggy balls. So this is the bumper in question, and as you can see, it's seen some shit. On the back we have these supports that clip into the bumper. Then we have this mount that slides in and connects the outside of the bumper to the car. The right support was unsuccessful in its attempt to escape and was collected by track workers. However, the left side is still at large, so this is the side that we need a 3D print. So first thing we need to do is get a scan. So we're going to pull the bumper inside to my computer and get a scan of the right hand side support and the general bumper area we're going to be attaching to. We need these measurements so that we can use the scan to cut away at the part. This is going to allow the two to mesh perfectly together. The support was kind of a pain to scan because the side was so thin the scanner struggled to go from front to back without losing tracking. Thankfully on the bumper that wasn't too bad. Somebody had already thoughtfully sprayed some brown scanning material on the bumper to give it some texture, and that came out pretty good. After a bit of processing, we've got our support scan there ready to rock. At this point, it's a whole bunch of individual data points, but we're going to go through and process them into a mesh. We didn't want to get too much detail, and I'll tell you why a little later on, but there we have it, our mesh ready to import into Fusion so we can start building our part. Well, we've got Fusion open now. We're going to import our mesh, and we are going to make sure it's oriented in the right direction. So to do that, we're going to go Direct Edit and then Align. And what we can do is actually select faces on the mesh and then line them up with our X, Y, Z axes. I've had it before when you import meshes, particularly big ones of like engines and whole fronts of cars, and they're in all sorts the wrong direction, and then you have to hand align them. This tool actually makes it way easier, and we're going to use that for couple of the alignments, and then the last one I'm just going to do by hand. But just having it set so that up on the part is up in Fusion makes life so much easier, and it's such a good starting point to have. With our mesh now correctly aligned within Fusion, we can start to focus in on designing the part that we plan to 3D print. Thankfully, we don't need to redesign the entire support structure that we scanned. The parts that we're going to focus on are simply the parts that mount the bumper to the car, which is essentially a U-shaped tracking. Now that's a pretty simple design that we can do very easily in Fusion. It took me about 10 minutes with a set of calipers to measure everything out and design it accurately. And the tolerances for this, they're pretty open. We don't need to worry too much about the tolerances. So the hardest part of this was actually locating this tracking section correctly within the bumper, because we need to get it back in the OEM position, but we don't have any real references for this side. So what I had to do was measure from the other side of the car and then transfer those measurements across to the left-hand side of the car. I think we got it pretty good in the end, so I'm very happy with those results. So we've got our part now in the right spot. Now we're going to do the most difficult part of this, and probably the most computer intensive, and that is we're going to use the mesh to cut away at the part that we're building so that they match up perfectly when we glue them together. So to do that, we are going to get rid of every part of this mesh that we don't need and that isn't going to be directly touching the part that we're going to be creating. Reason for that is these meshes are made out of millions of essentially triangles. The more triangles you get rid of, the happier the computer's going to be. So we've done the first part and we've got rid of everything we don't need. Now we're going to be reducing down those number of triangles. So you can see how many triangles were there a second ago. Now when we look in there, way less, orders of magnitude less, which is going to make all the operations down the track way easier for the computer. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to have to repair this mesh. So essentially you can't have a mesh that's paper thin and has a bunch of holes in it. You need to close up that form. And the problem I've got is this is actually closing up the form in the wrong way. It's closing up the side that we need, which is the inside of the bumper. Now, there might be a way around doing it, but I didn't figure that out. What I actually did was I created a second solid object, and I did a cutting operation on the outside of the bumper. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then use that second solid object that we've got to cut away at our part that we're going to 3D print, which should create a close enough surface for us to be able to have a good mating surface between the two. So you can see here, I'm making that second object at the moment, making sure that it doesn't spill out and it's all in the right spot. So when we do the cutting operation with the mesh, everything comes out the other side looking pretty good. Now we're going to do our cut. And if we go in, we should be able to see that it is cut away at the second object there. There we have it. It is cut away at that solid object. And we can use that then once we add some extra bits to the bracketry that we're going to be creating. We're going to be able to use that other solid object to cut away at the part that we're creating. Boolean function done, and there we have it. Matched pretty much perfectly to the contour of the car. Before we did a proper print up, I wanted to do a prototype to make sure it fit, so I got the 3D printer out. Thankfully we did that because I did have to drill a hole in it with the stepper drill because I forgot to put it in the design. And then we filled it with glue tack. I figured that's a great way to hold it onto the bumper for the test fit. And I gotta say, this has come out really well. You can see how well it molds to the bumper's design there. Even the little nub at the front, it's got a cutaway for. Then on the car, it's actually perfect. Went straight onto the support there, ready to rock. Back to Fusion, and we are gonna fix the little mistake that I forgot about on the prototype and make sure that we don't need the stepper drill for this final part. For the slicing, I did about 4 walls and 30% infill and a nice brim since it's being printed out of ASA. The reason I used ASA is pretty simple. I had a bunch of it really cheap, like sub $20 for 1 kilo. So that was the right filament for this, and it's pretty much going to be the right filament anyway. A couple of hours later, and the H2S is all done printing up the final pieces. If you look at the front side, you can actually see the triangles that make up the mesh, which is pretty interesting. And then on the back, we've got the piece that we designed for the sliding track. To hold this to the bumper, we're going to use JB Weld Plastic Bonder. It's a 2-part epoxy. You mix it together and then put it all over the part. In this case, I probably used a little bit more than I needed, but to be honest, you're better off to have too much on there than not enough. With the part smothered in epoxy, we're going to clamp it in position and let it cure overnight. In the morning, we came out and it was all looking pretty good. It is nice and strong. You can see the twist test there. It's not coming free at all. So that is going to be pretty good for what we need it for. Take it out and we should be able to do our final fitment onto the car. This car's seen more hits than most pop stars, so everything needed a little bit of help and persuasion getting into the right position. But once we got it there, everything was looking good. Bit of a tug test, and that isn't going anywhere. With some automotive upskirting, we can see that the mount from the car's perfectly slid into the support from the bumper. Overall, I'm really happy with this project. This is where 3D printing really shines. Although it's not as sexy as the intake, there was really no other way that we could do this project without a 3D printer, and it's come out absolutely perfect. With the bumper situation now truly handled, we are good to go back out on track without anything dangling off the car. Okay, well, there's going to be one thing dangling off the car. Anyone 3D print mirrors?